Hello and happy yet beautiful day to you. On last week's episode, I worked with a beautiful volunteer, Kim, who had been experiencing stress regarding money and also just circumstances in life. And that is part of what was connected to her ongoing health issues and pain. And so today I want to really unpack this topic even more because I know so often people can feel stress over money or life situation or circumstances or quote unquote manifesting what it is that they're wanting in life. And so I want to just bring a few insights to this because so often what can happen is people can feel stuck on the topic of manifesting. There can feel a sense of powerlessness around it, if you will, where a person may feel as though they're just hoping to manifest something in. All of the time you hear people say, just get a vision, and then they're waiting for something to arrive. And I have seen people literally spend years and years and years of their lives feeling that way, where they're just wanting to manifest something and feeling stuck and feeling depressed and frustrated, or even just trying to align with it and feeling happy and feeling positive, and yet the very thing that they're wanting is still not coming. And so I want to ground this a bit more because so often when we quote unquote manifest something in our lives, it does take both internal alignment and also external action. And what happens is as we unblock what's going on the inside, we can also then attract even more in life, but then we want to show up for that. And let me give you a grounded example where a person is blocked and then can open up to more and more success. And if I give you an example of a beautiful gentleman that I worked with, he had this feeling, he was very successful in his business, but he had this feeling of feeling like people were stupid. And it wasn't an intention to be judgmental. It was frustration because he felt like he was so unsupported and stuck in his business. And so he felt like nobody could help him. So it was just this feeling of frustration. And he had grown up learning, quote unquote, people are stupid. And so it was this feeling. So then what happened is then in his business, he was stressed out. He was losing money. He was stuck. And ultimately what happened is that he was trying to bring on help, people to help him out, people to help support him. Now, what he would do is he would bring on very knowledgeable people that graduated from universities and, just all the high level people he could. And what wasn't working is that he'd bring them on and he would say, oh, that one person's stupid too. What was happening is because of his belief that people were stupid, he kept thinking and perceiving and having that experience, even though it wasn't true. These people were very intelligent people. Now, when I started working with him, the analogy that I gave him is this, because he would tell them what to do, and they would not be able to follow through with it. But the analogy that I gave him was this, that it's like driving a car, if you will. That when somebody first learns how to drive a car, that they can drive with their hands, at 10 and 2, and they're driving a car, and they may not have it down. They're still thinking about everything. They're still learning it when they first start driving a car. Now, after a while, when they're driving a car, after a while, they're good at it. They're in flow. They're great. They can, they're talking on the cell phone. They're, eating food or drinking or whatever it is. They're multitasking while driving. But when first learning, it's a lot of conscious effort. And so how did this help him? So basically, when I helped him to see that he was the one that was doing things wrong, that the reason he wasn't feeling supported is because that he had this belief that people were stupid. And so what happened is he kept attracting people are stupid, and he kept thinking that, feeling that, perceiving that. It kept showing up in his life. When he changed this block and he started looking at things in a different way and looking at training in a different way, he started slowing things down a bit and realizing that when he trained someone, if he just gave them some time, they really learned it. They got it. Again, just like driving the car, they learned it. They got it. So then what changed is then he started training employees and training people around him, and they started getting it. And it's the difference between a skill. Like it was a skill to learn. And so what happened is from that place, everybody was even more successful. So he felt so much more supported. He grew his business exponentially, started making more money, so it was so many different things. Now, let's break this down for a moment, because the thing of it is, in his situation, he had a belief that kept perpetuating, that kept him stuck, the belief that people are stupid. And so that kept showing up and showing up, not because it was true, but because he was perpetuating it by the way he was showing up. He was expecting people to learn and be able to do things in minutes. And yes, they could get it, they could get the concept, but getting it into their nervous system and being programmed for it and being able to really master it, like the difference between learning how to drive a car and then getting used to driving a car, that difference, when he just gave them that space and that awareness to do that, everything changed. And so my point from this is to think about it like this, that when we have beliefs, they can block you from that success. So in his case, he was struggling, he was stressed, he was fearful, he was having health issues, he was doing all of these things. But when we unblocked his mind, then he started taking different action, everything changed. And so if we expand on this even more, so often people will feel blocked. Maybe like in the last episode, the beautiful volunteer that I worked with, she immediately said, I hate money. And of course, that's what will end up showing up for her in her life. And so it doesn't mean that as soon as she starts loving money, that it's just going to pile up at her door, but it does mean that she can take different actions around it or thoughts around it or whatnot. And by the way, I just love our beautiful volunteer. I was cracking up. I was laughing her heart. She's just a beautiful, beautiful being. And just her heart, her being just incredible. And so her creating that shift, though, or anybody creating that shift, they can start acting from a different place. Now, another analogy you hear me use all of the time is this, is that a writer with writer's block. If you've heard that before, where a writer goes to write and they feel blocked and they feel blocked. They don't have an idea. They feel blocked. They feel blocked. Well, then if they unblock that, they could have all kinds of ideas come in. And if they have this idea and that idea and that idea, but then of course, what do they need to do? Take action on it. Take action on it and write. And so my point is exactly that, is that when it comes to manifesting, it's about yes, creating a shift, but then as opportunity shows up, taking action and taking action to make it successful. And the reason that I say that is, again, because so often I'll see people who are just wanting to manifest money and they're just hoping and praying for money and hoping and praying for money. Meanwhile, they're feeling stressed and stuck in life. And so when they unblock things in their life, maybe it is the energy specifically towards money, maybe it's something else that's blocking them. But when you unblock yourself, then you start showing up in a different way. That's when success shows up. Now, don't get me wrong, by the way, things can manifest all of the time. In fact, during my own injury, I was very stressed financially. I was on disability. I was a financial mess. After I got better, everything, as I was changing my mindset of everything started getting better and better and better. And then as I had people, like I started helping with business, people said, wow, you can do this with your mind. Because I was, I started showing people how to release pain and all of these things. And then people said, can you help me with my business? And I said, yeah, here's the mindset. Here's what you want to do. Here's what you want to shift. And then it got bigger and bigger. And then I had, people come in. I had one woman who come in and said, hey, if you can help me to sell my business, I'll give you 6 figures. I was like, okay, great. So it attracted it. Now, by the way, did I help her? Yes. Did she sell her business? Yes, she did amazing and made millions of dollars. That's the point, is that she was blocked in certain areas. So she had different beliefs. I helped her unblock those beliefs. She took action on it. We talked about practical action too. And she sold her business. Amazing. She did that. And that's the point, is that so often people will feel stuck. And when it comes to manifesting, it's like they're waiting for everything to arrive. And yes, things do arrive, opportunities arrive. And so even in that case where I said, people started saying, wow, you can do this with the mind. Can you help me with my business? Can you help me sell my business? Can you help me scale like all kinds of things. I started checking into their energy, helping them identify the blocks, then helping them take practical action. So practical steps to then follow through, to then implement and create that change. And so that's the insight that I want to share with you. And there's actually a few insights from this. First and foremost, it's that when you're working on, if there's a block towards money, making sure to shift that and also make sure that you're taking practical action when it comes to manifesting, that if there's something that you need to take action on, you want to do so and show up 100%. That helps you align. So there's that. Another thing is that even when it comes to healing, you see me work with people and create a radical change all of the time. And I'll tell you it all of the time. I say it does take follow through. And so follow through really ultimately also means getting it in your nervous system. Or said another way, it's like this. Just like I said that I mentioned that driving a car is a skill. Like at first, maybe you go, okay, 10 and 2, you're driving a car, you're learning how. But after you start doing it for a little bit, it just becomes normal. And that's the same thing with creating a real change. Also, I tell people all the time that even healing, me learning how to heal people, it's a skill. And so, and not that I'm healing people, let me rephrase that. Showing people how to heal themselves is a skill. Because I learned how to work with the mind in a very different way. And then my mind opened up and continued to shift. And so my point is exactly that, is that number one, if you want to get real results in your life, you want to work with your mind in a different way. And that has been a huge breakthrough in my life, changed everything. Also, if you're wanting to manifest something in your life, you want to make sure to definitely shift the blocks, identify them, shifting the blocks, and then also, in many cases, being willing to follow through with that action and manifest it all of the way so you're creating that real change in your life. So that's the insight that I wanted to share, just because on, last week's episode, if you think about it, where I worked with a beautiful volunteer, Kim, there was, of course, an emphasis on creating that shift towards money, but then also taking practical steps. And I think so often people will see me, working with people with the mind, and we say, bingo and whatnot, and showing a radical shift, but they don't always see the practical side of working with people, even in businesses and life and transformation and health and all kinds of things, that so often when I work with people, especially who are making, millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, big businesses or growing or expanding or whatever it is, and that there is a practical change as well. And that's what I want you to think about. It's not about making millions or hundreds of millions or billions, unless that, of course, is your goal. But my point is just making sure to follow through, that genuine transformation does take actionable steps typically. But the beautiful thing is when you're aligned with it, it feels better. It feels doable. It feels empowering. And it's pivotal. It creates that real transformation. And so, food for thought. Those are the insights that I want to share with you on today's Quick IQ episode. And as always, I wish you an incredible rest of your day. And by the way, if you are somebody who's wanting to really understand and gain a deeper understanding of mind-body healing, there is a link in the show notes, so you can check that out for a free training. And as always, I want to ask you to please do take just a quick moment to hit the share button on this episode. Share it with somebody you love, somebody you care about, or somebody you don't even know, because the more that every single person in our world feels happy and healthy and loved and loving, the better this world is for all of us. And so please do take just a quick moment to hit the share button, and please do make a point to have a most wonderful, incredible rest of your day. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. We'll see you there.